flow. Flow or flow rate. Yeah, that funny looking V with the dot above it represents flow or flow rate. Again, you guys know during the test, if there's something on there that you're not sure about, you want to ask me a question, by all means you can ask. There's some things I will be able to answer. There may be other things I wouldn't be able to answer because I say if I answer what you're asking, I'm giving you the question away. But it never hurts to ask me. It never hurts to ask. You know, if it's something like this and you're like, what was that V with the dot above it? Right now I would tell you. In the future I probably wouldn't. But right now I would tell you if that was something that kind of caught your attention. Again, just as a reminder, aside from the anatomy stuff that we covered in the first chapter and some of the lung compliance stuff and airway resistance stuff we talked about this chapter, don't forget about those lung volumes and capacities. I know sometimes those concepts are not difficult, but it takes a minute or two to review them to make sure they're comfortable. Do not be surprised. Again, you know I posted a Word document that is basically a blank lung volume capacity chart. I didn't give you the key. I think you can figure out where things are located. But please don't be surprised if I give you a very similar chart and I say, which of the following letters represents the FVC or tidal volume or total lung capacity, whatever. I can give you some of those. Don't be surprised if I give you a verbal question. This is the patient's breathing maneuver. What volume or capacity did they just perform? If I say just normal regular breathing, what volume or capacity is that? That's tidal volume. See, you already got some answers to the question. So make sure you look back at those. And of course, be careful because sometimes IC and IRV are very similar. They're very close. One is measured at the end of a normal inhalation, but one is measured after a normal exhalation. So make sure IRV and IC are very, very similar. ERV and FRC can be very, very similar. And you know when I ask that question, and one of those answers is the right answer, I'm going to give you both of those as answer options. God damn. You know, if I just give you one, then the others were something totally off, then yeah, you'd be easy to find it by just elimination. But don't be surprised if I give you both of those. And that's very similar to how the NBRC tests you sometimes. When you look at answer options, you're like, you know, it's either this one or this one. And it's almost a 50-50 shot sometimes. Again, some of my questions are going to be like that. But the anatomy stuff, some of the terms that I know are new for you guys, make sure you look back at those. As far as diseases or pathologies or conditions, there was a few of them that we talked about this semester up to this point. For example, we did talk about what a pleural effusion is, what a pneumothorax is, what a pulmonary embolism is, what pulmonary edema is, what obstructive sleep apnea is. Again, I'm not asking a ton of questions about those things, but I will give you a question or two describing one of those, and you have to tell me which of the following it is or was for the patient. So make sure you do look back at some of that. The breath sound, you know, limitations as far as, you know, the flow, is that laminar, is that turbulent flow that would sound loud versus one softer or quieter than the other. Make sure you look back at that stuff. The test will be 45 multiple choice questions. Again, this Wednesday, so next time we're together on Wednesday, I know I see you guys tomorrow, but on Wednesday, we will have that test. And remember what I said about the test as far as sequencing. Well, Wednesday, we'll do the test first thing. This cardiopulmonary A&P test, we'll do it first thing at 9:30. I'll give you guys the entire class time, the 2-hour class time to complete it. And then after, you can relax because the test will be over with. And hopefully I've already had your score posted. Careful, don't get too assuming I'm going to have your score posted. I'll do my best to get it graded, but hopefully you at least have the relaxation of, okay, test is over with now. Let me just focus and listen to what he has to say. And we'll do fundamentals in the second half. So I'll just reverse the order. See, that's the joy or luck you get when it's the same instructor doing both classes. I could say, well, let's just flip-flop the order. If there was somebody else coming in to do the next class, well, then I'm sorry. That's going to be their normal time. So just because it's with me for both classes, I don't mind flip-flopping the order just so you guys can get the test done and over with and out of the way. Any questions for me, Chad?
Will you add a blank scratch piece of paper on the back of the test?
I won't say I'll add a blank piece of paper to the back of the test, but the test itself, completely wide open. So because I haven't printed out the test, so I don't know if the back page is blank or if there's questions on the back page.
I only asked because I want to be able to.
But on the test, so good question, and I understand what you're asking. On the test itself, you could write on that test whatever you want.
Yeah.
On the back of the Scantron even, on the back of the I know there's not a whole lot of space. On the back of the Scantron even, you could scribble things there, because you know what am I typically going to pass out first? Is the Scantron. So if you think there's something I need to jot down, you can write it on the back of the Scantron. Just don't write it out in the margins here, because sometimes it gets a little funny when it's trying to grade and sees other things on the front. So on the back of the Scantron, you're more than welcome to write anything you think is important. Or on the test itself, you can write down anything you think is important. Lung volumes, capacities, for example. Speaking of which, if I had to 20 minutes later, we'll be over here. All right. If I were you, could you draw the lung volume capacity chart? Again, so what do? I'm going to draw a box. There's going to be 4 different spaces, right? 4 different columns. One of these columns is going to represent the 4 volumes and capacities. That's what I would always start out with, and it doesn't matter. One day I wrote it where things were on this side, and the class freaked out on me, because that's not the way I see it, John. The one you had was on this side, but whatever. You should be able to put it in any sequence. I'll just write it, so I'll start on the left. If this, wrong. If that's the 4 volumes, here's my tidal volume, here's my inspiratory reserve volume, there's my expiratory reserve volume, and this must be my residual volume. There's half the chart already. If this is everything, total lung capacity. Now, the 2 in the middle sometimes can get a little funny for a student when they're trying to jot it down. Please make sure the things you are aligning do go together. And I'll show you an example of what I've caught a student doing before, because they weren't sure. So if I just say, let me draw a line from here. So, oops, that's not a straight line. Where's my ruler? Straight line. Okay. So if I draw a mark here, so this represents the end of a normal tidal volume. This is everything I can breathe in. What does that represent?
Inhalation.
This is a good one.
It's the inhalation.
So this is tidal volume, right? Go back. This is tidal volume. Normal breath in, normal breath out. Normal breath in, normal breath out. Now I'm here. Everything I can pull in, which means what am I doing? Am I inhaling or exhaling? I'm inhaling. Isn't that my inspiratory capacity? Because it does contain 2 or more volumes. Then that means after a normal exhalation, so I'm down here, what's everything left? What's everything left? Right? That's everything that's left. Yes? No? Yeah, that's everything that's left. Okay, so what do I put in here? So let me carry my residual volume over. This is not a new volume, I'm just carrying this over. Everything from here. So you, after a normal, full, complete exhalation, everything you can inspire and breathe in represents your final capacity. Or another way to say it, after the fullest, deepest breath in possible, you exhale everything you have in your chest. What did you just exhale? Your vital capacity. There's your 4 volumes, there's your 4 capacities. So I would suggest, and again, some people like to have this on this side and these 2 on this side, or flip-flop. I don't care. It doesn't matter the order as long as the relationship between them are the same. And the reason I said I've had students before say, and again, this is the correct version, right? This is the correct version. I have had students before, when they're drawing one of these lines, somehow it ends up in the middle of the ERV. Like, that's not how they work together. And that's going to screw up later when you're trying to figure out numerically what those values are. Again, so make sure. I wish I had a bunch of building blocks or Legos or something that were big enough, large enough to say, okay, this represents this volume, and this volume and this volume together equal this capacity. That's all these are, is Legos or blocks stacked together. But that's the volumes and capacities. So make sure not only you can identify what's there, but that you understand if I give you a description of the maneuver the patient is performing, what volume and or capacity did they just do? You know, if I say a patient's exhaled everything in their lungs possible, but there's still air that stays behind, what's volume or capacity? Is that air that stays behind? Even after a maximal full and complete exhalation, that's residual volume. If I simply say after a normal exhalation, the air left in our lungs is FRC, If I say after a normal exhalation, the additional air that you can exhale, that's the ERV, that you can exhale. Because remember, you can never exhale residual volume. All right, so make sure you do definitely go back and look at that. There's the fair share of questions that come from this. Okay, I'm not saying it's the whole test, but there's a fair share of questions that come from this particular area. So please make sure you don't omit it or study everything else, but you'll be disappointed. You would have wished you would have studied for this part anyways, a little bit more. All right, questions? So 45 multiple choice questions we'll be taking at 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Okay? All right, any other questions for me before I let you guys run? Look at that, see? Aren't you glad we started early? All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And some of you guys are going to a hospital tomorrow.